listening
to the CD Baby
CD Baby
DIY
Musician
Podcast.
Hey there, and welcome to episode number 124 of the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast. My name is Kevin Bruner, your host for the show. And on today's episode, we're going to hear from Brian Thompson. Brian can be found online at thornybleeder.com or under the Twitter handle thornybleeder. Brian is a music marketing coach, and we'll be talking about how to get people to listen to your music. But before that, I want to remind you that we do have a listener line that you can call in and leave a comment, ask a question. The number is 360-524-2209. Go ahead and call that. Leave your question or comment on the voicemail there, and we'll try and get it on a future episode of the podcast. And you can also email us at podcast@cdbabypodcast.com. We've been getting some great questions about CD Baby Pro and music publishing that we'll be using in an upcoming CD Baby Pro Music Publishing Your Questions Answered episode. So if you have any more questions about that you want to submit, that'd be great. Or if you want to just give us a shout out or request a topic that we cover, or even recommend someone that we interview on the show, we'd love to hear that. Just feel free to give us a call or an email. Well, let's get to my interview with Brian. Well, joining me is Brian Thompson. Brian, how you doing?
Doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Before we jump into conversation, why don't you give everybody a little background about who you are and what you've been doing?
Yeah, well, I run a couple of websites online. I'm frequently known as Thorny Bleeder. That is my Twitter handle, and pretty much any other social platform. If you add a / Thorny Bleeder to it, I'll probably pop up and I'll be there.
Is there a story behind that?
There is, and it really, Thorny Bleeder originated 7 years ago now as a record label, as an independent record label, and the two co-founders, I came on board literally a week after they've made the name. And now, so anyway, they took their two names and they threw it into like an internet word jumble machine, and it spit out, 12,000 different word combinations from what you could make with the letters. And Thorny Bleeder kind of stood out as just being like, what the hell is that? And it was just something that was memorable and like kind of ambiguous, and it was like, okay, well, yeah, sure, let's go with that. So a week later, that's what I adopted.
Well, cool. Well, I've been wondering that for a while. So continue on with your. So I run Thorny Bleeder. It is pretty much just, like I said, it did start off as a record label, primarily as a means to promote and distribute a band that I worked with for quite a few years, Art of Dying, who are now signed to Warner and getting ready to record their next album with Warner. But after they moved on to Warner, I then developed Thorny Bleeder and signed some other bands to the label and started managing acts. And then eventually I decided that that just really wasn't the right thing for what I wanted to do. So now it's really evolved into a music consultation business. And I do a lot of social media work, I blog all the time, I podcast all the time. I'm really mainly just to help educate and inform artists now and help them figure out how to market and promote themselves. Well, excellent. Well, we're glad to have you on the show. And you and I talked a couple weeks back, and we're bouncing around a couple topic ideas, and where we kind of landed on was the idea of how to get people to listen to your music. And I was kind of reflecting on that, when preparing for the interview, and thinking, that throughout time, that's always been the hardest part for the artist, is getting people to actually take a listen. But it's definitely changed as we've moved into the digital era. And on one hand, become easier, and on the other hand, become a little bit harder because there's so much noise out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's never been easy. And I think with technology, we've assumed it's become easier, because it's if you know that it's there, it actually is easy to listen to it. But getting someone to listen to it is the real hard part.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
So yeah, I mean, it's before, obviously before there was mass distribution, before you could point anyone just to a URL. You'd have to, try to get a physical copy in their hands and try to get someone's address and try to convince someone to review you so that someone else might want to go into a record store and order it. Or, a lot of purchases were made by people reading reviews in magazines before. And obviously that scenario doesn't really exist anymore. The dynamics have really changed. And now, so much of an artist's life is trying to convince someone to click a link.
Yep.
That really is one of the biggest jobs of a new developing artist, is getting someone to click a link. And that kind of, I think, when you look at it that way, that kind of changes the dynamics of how you're going about this chore. Because let's face it, everyone loves music. Everyone wants to be exposed to great new bands, but how do you convince them to press play on your track instead of that other track?
Yeah, and it is an interesting kind of place we're at as far as music promotion, and how it seems so easy that everyone's just a click away from your music at the same time, trying to convince them that it's worth clicking on. Just thinking about, here at CD Baby, we monitor a lot of, different Twitter feeds, and a lot of people use our handle when posting links. And just how many people do such a terrible job of trying to get someone to click on a link to hear their music. It's really entertaining, especially being in marketing myself. You kind of see, common mistakes, but at the same time, it's just like sometimes people are just downright offensive. And I'm like, what were you expecting people to do?
Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes the way it's positioned is that you can literally see the artist on the other end wringing someone's neck. Listen to my link. Listen to my link. And I just that doesn't work, you guys. That does not work. You can't force people to hit play. You can't batter them over the head with a MP3. You can't yell and scream at people. And I think one of the reasons is that, a new album gets pushed out there, and there is just, so much time and effort and money went into creating the album that you just want it heard. So I get that. And there's always some type of sense of urgency that, you want to get things rolling as soon as possible. You want your first bunch of reviews. You want your first batch of sales. Everyone wants to go viral and all that kind of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So I think there's a huge lack of patience, when really that's the main thing you need is patience. You need to just really hold someone's hand online and hold it for quite a while and gradually lead them to your track. There's so much pressure on, again, just listen to my track right now, when really it might take a month of very casual grooming to intrigue someone to finally click a link. And if you're patient, and if you're not hammering people over the head, and if you're continually positioning yourself to be an intriguing personality, then that is going to get you into the place where eventually someone's going to go, you know what? This guy, I don't know. I got to check this. I got to listen to this. There's just something about this. You know what I mean? But it's those hard sells that never work. No one likes to be sold to.
Yeah. Or yelled at, because a lot of times I feel like I'm being yelled at. But it is interesting because, when you start posting online and building a following, and even when you have a following, it becomes real easy, like you're saying, to get impatient and just say, go listen now. And depending on who you are, that may or may not work. If you're an enormous artist with a huge following that's been waiting and waiting for the next release, of course, that message is fine. But if you're an independent artist who's trying to build, I don't know, kind of build some mystique, a story, whatever, it seems like artists are so quick to just kind of cheapen themselves with the way they promote their own music, as opposed to just building a story around it.
Totally, and they're doing themselves a disservice by putting so much pressure on the music and the link that they're sharing. Now, I want to, again, we're positioning this to being that if you want your music heard, for the better part, they need to click a link. So that means that a huge portion of your life is now reduced to online profiles and little files. They're not even files. It's a link that's being passed around. So if you have, as an artist, if you have been ignoring your online profiles until the day that your new album is released, then why would anyone want to click on your link today if you haven't even been on your profiles in the last 2 months or 6 months, or hardly ever have been? So really what I'm positioning this into is a call for people to regularly be on their profiles and not be selling, be on them, provide value to people, make them care, so that when you do have something to promote, there's going to be people there that are already listening to you. Because if no one is there to listen, then you're just going to be yelling at an empty room.
And that's true. Yes.
So, and one of the things that anybody in social media is always talking about is, you need to, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, is a common term, right? Which is why we always say, the day that you go into the studio is the day that you should start marketing your album. So, and you can start by, taking Instagram photos and start by teasing. Should we go with this title? Should we go with this title? Give little snippets of lyrics, and can create a steady stream of content that teases and intrigues over not just days, but weeks and months, so that eventually, for those people that have been paying attention, when your album does come out, you're not having to sell them, you're actually informing them. So now you're saying, please listen to my track. You're saying, the track that I've been telling you about for 6 months is finally here. Mm-hmm. And now there's people who have been waiting for it, because you have built up this really great multimedia story over days and weeks, over Instagram and YouTube and blogs and interviews and teaser videos and live performances. And it's all built up to hopefully this audience that cares enough about you to want to hit that link.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point about talking to an empty room. There's two things there. One, nothing annoys me more than when I see someone I follow online somewhere just pop up and broadcast something they want me to do, and then disappear again until 6 months later when they have something else they want me to do. It's irritating to the people that are following you when you do that. But also, the interesting thing is, if you're not online engaging, both like Facebook and Twitter, and it'll probably happen with more social networks as they're just trying to juggle so much data. If you're not online participating, they're starting to show your posts to less and less people. So if you're not actually engaging, your reach is going to be severely limited.
Well, yeah. I mean, a good example is, a lot of the work that I end up getting is from people who have been seeing my name slide across their screen, whether it be on Twitter or Instagram or all of the different profiles I'm on. And they've been watching my stuff for like a year. And then finally a moment clicks and they reach out to me. And it's always, they reach out to me because of whatever. I might share like something completely, like I rarely actually promote myself. I like to educate and inform, and through that educating and informing, it reminds people that, oh yeah, Brian's out there. Maybe I could talk to him. So that if your name isn't regularly appearing in people's feeds, then you're forgotten about. So if you only swoop in when you have something to sell, then you're not really seen as one of their, I don't know, as a friend. It's just like you're abusing that relationship almost if the only time you pop up is to ask for something.
Yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing I find with artists, and I've been there myself on I think pretty much every release I've been a part of, it's like you spend all this time in the studio and it's really easy to get busy and kind of neglect kind of the storyline that's there that's pretty intriguing to non-musicians because they don't quite understand kind of the magic that happens to bring it all together, and they love to see insider takes on what's happening. But then from the point the record's done to the release, just to go crazy and want everyone to just instantly rush out and build anticipation for what you're doing. And then when the album comes out, it seems like when the time to start really like taking the story to the next level, they kind of peter out and like, well, that was that, and kind of start to just play their shows and move on. So it's kind of interesting that the artists, from where I've experienced, it seems like they're not taking advantage of this whole, what I would consider like this whole arc in their story of this chapter of this new release, and just kind of cheapen it to just little one-off little promotions here and there.
Well, totally. And, I think you used a very important word, and that was story. A large part of great marketing is storytelling. You're not selling, you're telling a story, and you're hopefully crafting a story that someone actually wants to be a part of. Mm-hmm. So if you haven't been telling a story, and your story begins at the day you start yelling at people online because you just released it on the same day as 10,000 other people released their album, there is nothing to care about. You have to give people a reason to care. And enough of people have to stop this, you gotta hear us to hear what we're about, or like we're unlike anything you've ever heard before, and
of course,
it's language like that isn't helping you either.
Yeah,
like very, very few people are unlike anything you've ever heard before. Let's be honest.
Yes, I once saw an artist email us here at CD Baby saying that their music was so unique, their lead singer had never been influenced by anything because he had never heard any music before he started writing music. I was like, you have got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
There's no way that's even possible. Not only that, it probably isn't very good. You're just basically saying that we aren't good.
Yeah. So again, back to storytelling, Matt. I mean, it really, that's why I say, like, whenever you even, marketing never ends. And if it never ends, then really it doesn't really have a beginning either until maybe the day that you name your band. Like, it really should be a continual, ongoing story. And certain chapters you want the reader to finish on their own. So it's like, okay, here I've opened up the book halfway, and now here's the rest of it. But you have to hit play if you want to hear the rest of it, because this is music after all. Mm-hmm. But you have to build up that intrigue. You have to, I know this is an overused term in marketing and social media these days, but it's a fact is that so much of it is built on relationships. And it doesn't mean that you have to, I'm not talking about, hugs and kisses relationships with fans. It's like, again, people recognizing your name, because fans are earned one at a time. Mm-hmm. And they're not these batches of 10,000 people that people seem to think exist in the online world. It's like, that doesn't happen. Every play is a person clicking that button, and you're going to have to hold their hand to click it.
Yeah, I can hear some of our listeners who are newer or just starting out saying, that's great, but how do I even get somebody intrigued in the first place? Are there some some tangible things that you could for an artist that's just building a profile from the ground up, but already has music out and is just trying to get, I don't know, make some inroads and get people to check out their music, a couple of tangible kind of things that they can take with them and put into practice?
Well, yeah, I mean, the first thing is to try to stop selling. I honestly think that an artist's insistence to always be selling is doing a massive disservice to them, and it immediately shuts people down, and they won't click play. So the best thing to do is to try to create intrigue in whatever little community or niche that you seem to be a part of. Mm-hmm. And the best way to do that is through regular blogging on your website. You need to have a blog on your website, and I always recommend that blog is your front-facing landing page, so that if you are blogging regularly, every time a customer or a potential fan visits your site, it'll look different. And by your website looking different every time someone goes to it, there is some subconscious realization there that this is an artist who cares about what they're doing, because they're regularly updating their website. And hopefully, if they enjoy what you posted, then the next time they come back, it'll look different. So then it's training them to keep coming back, because this guy keeps on posting really cool stuff on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. But if your website looks the same today as it did a month ago, as 3 months ago, then why would I ever go to your website? If your website never changes, then why would I go there? Mm-hmm. So you need to give me a reason to go to visit your website beyond just your music, because hopefully, what if I did buy your music? What if I am one of the few people that bought your music? Well, you still want people to go to your website, because that is eventually where you will get them to join your email list. That is eventually where you'll get them to see your tour dates, or maybe your upcoming crowdfunding campaign, or whatever you have to offer. It's going to be your best home for that is going to reside on your website. So you need to blog regularly, and through creative blogging, and building a story and telling and finding your voice in the world of blog writing, you're going to create content that becomes shareable beyond just the MP3. And anything that is shared creates a potential for someone to stumble back to where it originated from. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying every musician has to become a professional blogger, but you need to use your blog. There is a difference. You need to at least make an effort. A blog could even be whatever. If need be, it could even be a Tumblr feed. Just have something that's regularly updated, that's also optimized with all of your other content around it, so that so it's right there. They don't have to go stumbling for it. And of course, the other actionable things would be to make sure that you're on Twitter. Twitter is one of the most game-changing things out there for anyone, as long as they're actively taking steps to use it correctly. You can't just sit there and wait for people to tweet you. That doesn't work. You have to. I mean, having an account doesn't mean that you're really a tweeter. So you need to actively put some time in every day to follow people that are potential fans, or industry people who might be worth networking with, following them without selling to them, communicating with them, creating some discourse, and then slowly letting them know that, hey, yeah, I've got some new music, and I've got a website, and I'm a musician, and check out my YouTube channel, and all that kind of stuff can happen gradually, but don't shove them a whole bunch of links all at once. They'll run away screaming.
Yeah. I could see, talking about the website and blogging. First thing I would say is that a lot of artists I've talked to get frustrated when they're like, I don't know how to blog or want to blog, but it doesn't have to be writing big articles. It certainly can be if that's how you express yourself, but it could be photos, it could be videos, it could be, you know, all sorts of things. It doesn't just have to be just paragraphs and paragraphs of thoughts that you write down. But I know a lot of people also say, what is the point of doing all that? All I want to do is get someone to listen to my music. Just before we got on the phone for this interview, I was talking to one of the guys here and saying that we were talking about websites related to, you know, one of our brands here, Host Baby. And I was talking about how frustrating it is when you go to a band's website and it looks like they haven't been there in years and the information's outdated. And I see this happen with major label artists as well. It's not just indies that have this problem. But putting it in context of this conversation, I don't find myself as much out there looking, going, man, I really got to find some new music. But I'm always looking for a good story. And so if I click on a link and it's a good song, and then I go to the website and it just looks like it's a ghost town, you know, I make a lot of assumptions. One, they're not that serious, or maybe they broke up, or, you know, this isn't really something worth investing time and energy in. But if I go there and I'm like, hey, this is a cool track, and I go to their site and I see like this really cool story emerging in life and things that kind of connect me to them, then they have my attention. They already even listen to the music, but until they, you know, I kind of take it a little deeper, I'm not going to become a fan. That's for sure.
Totally. And, you know, and I totally understand artists' reticence to wanting to, quote, become a blogger. And again, you don't need to become a blogger. You just need to have a blog and you need to use it. And this is a skill that you can learn. If you can write a freaking email, you can write a couple of sentences about that funny event that happened at the gas station while you were filling up your band van going to last Friday's gig. Mm-hmm. Honestly, it's not freaking rocket science. Write a couple of paragraphs just as if you're writing an email to your buddy, and then hit publish. Put on a photo, and that's it. Tell a story. You don't have to have an objective. Share some elements of your personality, of your sense of humor, your trials, your tribulations, your successes, your failures. Maybe you are a passionate, Lego collector. Okay, well, share that. Maybe you can all of a sudden find a special niche in the Lego community as being one of their own. Like, seriously, whatever freaky little hobby you have, there's a corner of the web that is flourishing in that freakiness. Go there. Build a temple there. Those are your people, man. I've got an artist who I've been working with on and off, consulting and doing some work with for the past, at least a year, if not longer. And one of the things that I've continually been talking to him about is exactly what we're talking about, is grooming him to keep blogging, dude. Keep blogging. Yeah, that's great. But yeah, keep going. And I've always told him that eventually, you know, when you're comfortable with writing, you'll be able to start pitching articles to other websites that could all of a sudden get your name out there. I see it all the time as I'm compiling my daily newsletter. I see articles written by artists that now I know that artist's name and I'm intrigued with what they had to say, with their experiences, and I dig deeper, and I'm often pleasantly surprised. Well, This artist appeared on your website 2 weeks ago. And I was so happy that after a year of, like, he'd never blogged really either. His name's Ethan Collister, and he wrote a post on March 11th on your site called Music Conference Tips for Independent Artists.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a feel-good story. We know someone who wasn't comfortable with blogging, and then finally, you know, after at least a year of working through it, now he's on like a massively popular website with his name right there and a link going right to his website. That is the part of the continual process. Now, of course, you know that it doesn't mean that he's going to be heard by tens of thousands of people. But if you do steps each and every day like that, bit by bit, you will earn one fan at a time. And maybe this article gained him 10 fans. Well, maybe the next week he writes another article, or maybe he has an Instagram photo that gets passed around. It is really funny. Or now it's not just about being a social media rock star, but it is about the concept of putting relationships before selling. I think informing and educating rather than pushing goes a long way. For example, like I write bios, and I think some of the best bios are where you're just informing people of the facts rather than using really extravagant, colorful adjectives that really blow it up to be big when it is, right? Because when it's just the facts, it's like, okay, well, we can't argue with the facts, and the facts have, again, they've created enough intrigue that I'm pretty curious. So curiosity is a very powerful human emotion that can really help you realize a lot of success if you know how to create curiosity in someone on the other end.
Yeah, and I've seen the example that you give of the blog article work all the time for artists. And usually how I find out about it is through, we have, I don't know if you're an artist and familiar with Google Alerts. It's a great tool for artists to be able to track their kind of online conversations. If Google basically tells you, hey, something just was posted with your brand name or your band or whatever, and so we track those things for CD Baby, and all the time we come across articles that a band posts, and it's about a subject. It could be related to music, or it might be related to some other field that are just communicating in a community on a message board. And just how they're talking about something, they put a link to the music, and then people are like, "Man, I loved your album," and it's a way that people just kind of stumble across. It's whatever the community they're participating in gives them the authority, and then with the link, it becomes something where people are intrigued, and instead of feeling like they're just being pitched something. But we see that happen quite often here.
Yeah, if you can create an environment where the person on the other end feels that they discovered you rather than they fell for your marketing, that's a huge way of getting some fans.
Yeah,
and again, that's done by not selling.
Yeah, there's a quote that I like to pull out by Adam Clayton, the bass player from U2. It was in Rolling Stone. I think it was last year. It might have been the year before. He was kind of, lamenting the fact that their album didn't perform very well, and he was blaming it on the fact that the single didn't do well. And I don't have it in front of me, so this is probably a paraphrase of the actual quote, but he said, when the single doesn't work, people don't have a way into the music and into the album. And the thing that intrigued me by that quote is, U2 still kind of struggles with the same thing that every artist struggles with, although, they have much bigger budgets and a way to just beat people over the head with a pretty rabid fan base as well. But at the same time, that's kind of how people should be thinking, that I'm trying to find a way for people to get into the music, and just saying, check out my new song isn't it, but creating intrigue and story and community and participating in all those things gets people away into the music. And then when they do, they really appreciate what they hear.
Totally. And with that, I mean, community is such a massive part of it. I mean, I touched on it earlier about, appealing to the freak in you or whatever. I mean, that's, one of the things that Amanda Palmer has done, and even like Lady Gaga, on to a much huger scale. I mean, she appeals to a certain niche audience that, some people think that she will never be able to do any wrong. And that's really great for her career. But I mean, you can do that on any scale. That's scalable. That's what I'm talking about. Is she does have a real connection with her fans, unlike a lot of other big stars that have no connection. So it's that community, it's that sense of connection that that can really help foster support for what you haven't even put out yet. And I think, something I always say as well is that the more that you give, the more you will give back. So, and I don't just mean in giving away free stuff. I mean giving away of your time, giving away of cool glimpses into a life that other people might not see, such as being in a recording studio. Very few people actually even know what a recording studio looks like, or what the vibe is like, or what goes on there. So if you can give people glimpses into things that they might not be familiar with, and again, give away your time, give away prizes, contests, the more creative that you can be as well is also going to set you apart. Because again, if all you're doing is saying, please press play on this link, that's not fun. So many people use the web, to be amused, to be entertained. And if you're positioning yourself in a very dry, stale manner, there's a lot of competition for people's time and attention. So, like it or not, that's what you have to compete with. You're no longer just competing with musicians. You're competing with every silly cat photo, every YouTube video of a skateboarder breaking their ankle, or you know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's not just competing for who has the best looking graphic album cover on the CD shelf. Those days are gone. We're in a different game now. Like it or not, that's the way it is. So you have to step up to the new game.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to. There is no other way around it. But again, this isn't just about social media. You can still, are you playing constant gigs? That is a way for real word of mouth to happen, like without there being an online buzz. So many people, I see it time and time again, where a band releases an album and then they have one hometown CD release show, and then that's it. And they don't go out on tour, and then maybe they'll play another show 3 months later in their hometown. It's like, if all of your energies have been to simply create a, quote, product that you want to sell, pretty sure that's going to fail for you. It can't be just based on selling a link or selling a plastic disc. Your music career is about so much more than that. And it needs to be. And if it isn't about more than just the music, then you have a really uncompelling brand that doesn't stand up against all of the other people that are competing for your potential audience's attention.
Yeah, yes, I would agree. It's going back to kind of what I mentioned at one point, kind of the way a lot of artists tend to promote themselves sort of cheapens their music and their whole brand in general. A lot of times, it's, they put all this effort and care and heart and love into, their passion of making music, and then a lot of times reduce it down to the most uninteresting, boring, one-liner that they can think of, just because they want people to check it out right away. But I think kind of drawing in some of the live aspects, it's interesting because I see a lot of bands, they'll play, they'll leave, and then they just expect people to feel some sort of connection to them. Where then, there's some bands that they play, they go out, they talk to people, they give away some music, just building a little relationship to people and just like wanting them to know that's a little bit about the album and get it in their hands so they take it home and actually do listen to it and have that extra little connection that they, that this is an artist that cares about, one, the fans, because they were out there talking to me and all that, and two, that they really want me to enjoy their music.
Yeah, and fans don't want to be love and left.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So I mean, like any good company, you should stay in constant contact. Touch base. How are you doing? How did you like? What's your favorite song? How was our show last week? What do you think of our new T-shirt? You need to, again, this is all about building a community. So having a successful career in music and getting your music heard isn't just about the songs that were recorded. And if it were just about the songs that recorded, granted, it would be a lot easier for everyone, but it's never been that way. I mean, that's why a whole business was formed around music in the first place, is let's figure out how are we going to get people to listen to this. Yeah. That's exactly why the music, and then, okay, now that we got them to like it or we got them to play it, now let's get them to buy it. So really reduced down to the most basic terms, that part of the industry hasn't changed. We still want people to talk about us. We still want people to hopefully play and to share it and to ultimately click the buy on whatever buy link it might be. So as much as you need to build a story, not only for yourself, but a great story will also help you land better press. So if you go knocking on a reviewer's door and they actually answer and you actually do have a conversation with them, well, they're not going to just believe all of the propaganda that you've sent them. They're actually going to go online and they're going to snoop around to see what the reality of your situation is. Mm-hmm. Instead of just reading this propaganda bio that you sent them. So if they go to Google and they find that nothing is happening and you haven't played any gigs and you have no merch to sell except for that one T-shirt that's been sitting there for 5 years, or you don't blog, you don't tweet, you haven't Facebooked in months, they just, in terms of a music critic who might have the potential to bring thousands of people to listen to your music, that's for them it's like, I'm going to have to pass. Sorry guys, great music, but there's not a story here.
Yeah, I think that was a good way to start kind of bringing it home when you start talking about a music critic, because I know a lot of artists want a music critic to check out their music. And people like Pitchfork and other websites have a considerable bit of power when it comes to, they feature a band and that band's going to get a little bit of attention and possibly some sales and definitely some people listening to their tracks. But they're not going to write about somebody that doesn't have a story. Your local paper, your local blog, the national blog, the international music blog, nobody's going to write about you just based on the fact that you have some tracks available. There's got to be a story. So
there has to be a story, and you have to write a lot of it yourself.
Exactly.
You can't wait. You can't assume that someone else is going to spend a day research to write a story for you. You really need to write it yourself. And I don't mean literally write it. I mean there being like a treasure map of like someone like just a process of stumbling, and just by glimpsing at all of your stuff, you can tell that there's a story.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I think the main thing I want to impress upon people is that, it takes a lot of time, and quote product launches aren't what they used to be. And they don't matter as much as they used to either. You can easily still a year after release have as big of a month, 12 months later in terms of digital sales or whatever, as you did on the first month that you released it. In fact, I would hope that it's bigger 12 months from now, because it's a slow build. So don't go for that big, huge splash. There's more longevity in a slow build. And just touching again back on the relationships with reviewers and professional music critics, a huge part of the digital music recommendations that are happening out there are still made by these critics. Like you said, Pitchfork, they are massive tastemakers. The people that program Slacker FM or the Slacker app, those are all manually curated by professionals who are in touch with the scenes that they're curating. People that curate Songza, those are all, these are all real humans. Not everything is digitally aggregated now, like Pandora. There is a lot of human intervention. So if you have a great story on top of having great music, that will set you above the rest of the heap.
Well, that sounds like a good place to kind of wrap this up, unless you had any other final thoughts you wanted to share before we close this out.
I think my final thoughts are going to be some typical stuff I always say, which is persistence is key. You need to do something each and every day that's going to better your tomorrows. Each and every day.
Excellent.
Don't just do something once a week. Do something little every day, because at the end of the year, that's going to be 365 really cool things.
That's good advice. Where can artists find out more about you?
Thornybleeder.com is my music marketing, branding, and motivational site. And I've also got a daily newsletter and podcast that is found at thediydaily.com.
Well, excellent. Well, it was great having you on the podcast, Brian. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the podcast. Thanks again to Brian Thompson for being on the show. Again, you can find him online at thornybleeder.com or under the Twitter handle thornybleeder. And check it out. He's got lots of great things that he's sharing online. Finally, just want to remind you that we do have our listener line. The phone number is 360-524-2209. Give us a call with your comments, feedback, questions, and just remember, try and keep it, on the brief side, around a minute to 2 minutes long, so we can get it on the podcast. And you can also email us at podcast@cdbabypodcast.com. Well, we'll catch you next time. Bye. You've been listening to the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast, broadcasting from Portland, Oregon, USA.